If you're like me, you've played in or maybe even run a D&D campaign at some point in your gaming career that just had an awkward beginning. Sometimes it's hard to prevent, and it might not be the DM's fault. The players just might be new to role-playing or have differing play styles and might be awkwardly feeling it all out. Or they do something totally unexpected and the DM has trouble adjusting. It happens sometimes. You're okay. Hey, people like you. Let's talk about some killer ways to kick off your D&D campaign. Hi everyone, you are watching WASD20. My name is Nate, and this is Dungeon Master's Journey, a series where we talk about the art and science of dungeon mastery. Today's video is a bit of a continuation from the last video, which was all about the stereotypical start of the RPG campaign. You meet in a tavern, or perhaps you meet at the inn. You can go check out that video to hear all my thoughts on starting in taverns, but basically I think that the trope, and it definitely is a trope, can be done really well. And I love taverns and inns in my games. But variety is good too, and some of you are probably just plain sick of the trope. So here we go. In this video we'll be covering several other ways you can kick off your campaign and really start it with a bang. I briefly mentioned this in the last one, but I think you as the Dungeon Master should have two goals in mind as you start a new D&D campaign. First, think about how you're going to forge the bonds of the party. Find a way to bring them together. Secondly, get them off adventuring. Give them a goal. This is important for having some kind of narrative direction. It doesn't have to be the huge campaign conflict with the arch villain and all that right away. While there's nothing wrong with setting that all out in session 1, in the short term you at least want to give them some kind of conflict. It could be an immediate threat, an adventure or quest, or maybe it's a mystery to be solved. So you want to bring them together and you want to get them doing something. And if you're lucky, needing to do something can absolutely bring them together and you can get a 2 for 1. So without further ado, let's get into it. Campaign starter number 1. Your prisoners. You've been captured. This is a common one. Like, I've played a lot of computer RPGs over the years, and I've played in a few D&D campaigns as well, and this one is really common. The Witcher 2, I'm looking at you. Dark Souls, every single Elder Scrolls game. I'm serious, go check. I don't own too many D&D modules, but I know that Out of the Abyss starts this way, and I read about some older ones that do too. It works. It's a really good way to start. Your players are in a prison or about to be executed, or maybe they've been captured and are being marched back to the city. Here's one. The Dragon Grin campaign I currently play in on the channel Tabletop Terrors started us off all being crucified. Like we're literally hanging from crosses, about to die. As you can imagine, it was incredibly intense. And we actually rolled almost no dice that session, just a lot of role play. And by the way, I'll put links to all the things I'm talking about down in the video description today, so go check them out. Moving on from that traumatic moment in my RPG career, when they're prisoners, the player characters all have something in common, and they have a common enemy, the captors. They may need to work together to survive. There's also some interesting hooks for character backstories here. Why were you captured? What did you do wrong? There's some really good hooks there. Another prisoner idea that doesn't have all these same sorts of hooks, but can still be pretty cool, is a more natural prison. Perhaps the players were on the road and as the campaign opens, find themselves awakening in the web of a gigantic spider, unsure of how they even got there. Or maybe there was an earthquake that has buried the players in rubble. One minute they're enjoying themselves and the next minute they come to trapped under a pile of rubble. And don't let them fight or think their way out of these situations in the first place. Start the campaign with them trapped or captured. You don't need to role play the whole story of how they got there. I recommend not doing that too much in the middle of a campaign, but for an opener, I think it can work well. Campaign starter number 2, the large gathering. I'm thinking of a festival, a fair, a party. It could be a market day or bazaar. This one is fairly similar to the tavern idea, but what I think works really well is starting them in the town square. If you're a fairly new DM, I wouldn't recommend a huge city, because it can be really hard if your players want to go exploring that city. It's just a lot to manage. One of my first experiences GMing was Rise of the Rune Lords, and I love this book. It's a great example of how a festival opening can work really well. So why does the festival opening work? First, there's a lot of opportunities for interaction and role play. It can also be a really good chance to impart some information about the world. What are the markets like in this location? Is it a holiday? If so, what holiday? This can be a great chance to give your players some information about the history of your world if the holiday commemorates an event. Or perhaps it's a religious holiday that can tie in with a major deity, and that deity could become a much larger part of the campaign. If you're going with a festival, add a few foods, some entertainment, and make up some simple games for the players to try. I'll actually put a link in the description to a few of the games I used when I ran Rise of the Runelords. Campaign starter number 3, kick off with a shipwreck. I played in a one-shot that had this premise, and it was a lot of fun. It was great. The players are on a voyage to, I don't know, you decide, or maybe you decide that with the players. They're already together, but probably with a whole lot of others. So as the campaign opens, they find themselves to be the only ones who, after a terrible storm, happen to wash up on a certain beach. Or perhaps they're one of the few who step up to explore when another crew member suggests that some of the survivors do so. As with being captured, the PCs will likely have to work together to survive or find a way to be rescued. Campaign starter number 4, start at the quest location. Arriving at the quest you've already accepted. It could be right there on the doorstep, like you stand at the mouth of the cave. This is an absolute classic and goes back to the days when a lot of groups would skip the role-playing and deep story hooks and world development for a stronger focus on delving the dungeon for treasure. You stand at the mouth of the cave and right into the action we go. It works. Or it could be a you answer the summons sort of thing. A mysterious note, and now as the campaign opens you meet the patron. Or a region-wide call for dragon slayers is put out with the promise of great treasure. All interested parties should gather at such and such location. And so the campaign opens at that location. That's the premise of a campaign I actually just started in as a player on Rollgate. Have I mentioned Rollgate? WASD20 has a new partner. Rollgate is a fairly new play-by-chat RPG application. If you have a really busy life and have trouble scheduling a game group, play-by-chat is a great way to go. It's a text-based RPG experience, and while people have been doing this for years in various forms, message boards, forums, Facebook groups, and recently Discord, Rollgate is designed for RPGs from the ground up, and it has a ton of cool features, with more on the way. So I definitely recommend you go try it out. It's free, it's easy, it's mobile friendly. Join through my link below and let them know I sent you. And also look out for some of my videos being featured on their platform. Back to the campaign starters. Number 5, narrative interactions. These are a bit more scripted. Think of a movie scene where you're role-playing how you meet with the other players and the DM is playing the part of the director. In session 1 of the Provoker's Bleakwrath, we were all in a city, and my character was actually confronted by a town guard who happened to be one of the other party members. There was an encounter between us, some great banter, and after a sudden attack in the town square, we were off and running, best friends forever. Kind of. Now, this takes some solid Dungeon Master knowledge of the characters beforehand, and a bit of trust in the DM to put you in a narrative situation that will be true to your character. But they can be really cool. Start one character bartering with another one in the market. One character finds another in a tough spot and has a chance to bail them out. You get the idea. Now, all the things I've mentioned up to this point, I think can work even if your player characters have no connections, no kind of prior relationship. But it's worth considering the formation of some relationships before you play. In a lot of RPGs, this part is built into character creation. Fiasco is one I've heard of, or Tales from the Loop, which I recently played. Go ahead and borrow some of these things from those systems. I'll also put a link below to the Pathfinder Ultimate campaign page that has a role table for relationships with fellow adventurers. You can ask them to form these connections right before you start the game, or you can do this in a session 0, where you really get a feel for what sort of campaign the players would like, and everyone can kind of work together to create characters. So forming character relationships, even if they're only a very distant or weak connection, can make kicking off a campaign a bit easier. Though I have to admit there is something kind of beautiful about just kicking it off with no prior connection and watching the relationships form organically in that first session. It's really just a matter of taste. In addition to character relationships, another thing that can make it easier is just getting some input and buy-in from the group for the storyline. When you invite them to play D&D in the first place, it's not a bad idea to give them a premise, an elevator pitch, for the setting or for the storyline. You have all been drawn to the ruins of the old city of Belsara. A ragtag group of settlers hope to rebuild. Many of them are pilgrims here to restore the old Temple of Light. Others are investors or prospectors hoping to earn some coin. But what really happened to this once grand city? What secrets might lie in these ruins? That's just a tease from the campaign I'm currently running. You could give more detail about specific threats or enemies, rumors, significant world events. So again, you don't need all of this. Figuring out the character relationships and the basic campaign story arc can be fun to figure out together in the game. But having one or both of these things figured out beforehand can free you up to just jump right in and be bold with your campaign opener. And that brings us to our sixth and final campaign starter, in media res. Imagine you sit down to play for session 1 and your DM says, "You're falling. You've broken through what seemed like solid earth and now you're hurtling down into a pit. Splash! Water, just a few feet, enough to cushion your fall a bit. As the 4 of you look around and try to adjust your eyes to the darkness, you hear a low growl. Roll initiative." Oh man, I'm getting excited. Starting with a fight for your life. It's just beautiful. Let's try another similar campaign starter. Your lungs burn. The cold night air is biting as your feet pound on the frost-covered cobblestones of Marinth. "After them!" a voice cries. "They're sheltering an infernal tiefling!" You'd been warned Marinth had changed in recent months, but you didn't expect your visit to be this short. Up ahead you can see it. The last turn was a mistake. A wooden wall taller than any of you looms across the alley, and the mob is closing in. What do you do? Starting in the middle of things, or in media res, is a great storytelling technique. The narrative gaps are filled in gradually as you go on from there, and your players are treated to some action right off the bat. So many good books and movies start this way. So pay attention to some of the openings of your favorite stories and use them as inspiration for your campaign. Lastly, while I talked about these as campaign starters, certainly they could be used for one-shot games as well. Just remember, with a one-shot, you probably want to keep it more brief so you can get to the action a little bit sooner. So what's inspired you here? What campaign opener are you dying to try out? Are you in for the slow burn, or do you prefer to jump right into the action? What are some of the favorite campaign openers that you've experienced in your gaming past? Leave your comments down below and let's share some awesome ideas and inspiration. If you liked this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Maybe you want to share it with a fellow Dungeon Master to get some good conversations going. I'd really appreciate it. And if you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit that button down below to make sure you don't miss out on future videos. Lastly, I want to thank my patrons for their support of this channel. Patrons are people who give to WASD 20 on a monthly basis to make sure this content keeps coming. Patrons, you're amazing. Thank you so much. And if you want to join with these amazing people, you can check out the link to my Patreon page down in the video description. All right, that's all for this one, everybody. Take care. Happy dungeon mastering. You'll see me again very soon.